The man seeking to become president of Jamaica. This is Toriano Beckford, the man seeking to replace the Queen of England and the Governor-General, to become the first black, Jamaican-born, head of state, in our nation's history. This presentation seeks to give Jamaicans an insight into the man, the ambition, and the cause, behind this historic endeavor. Chapter 1. Who is Toriano Beckford? Toriano Diego Beckford is a Pan-Africanist, an activist and a politician who was born in Kingston and grew up in Westmoreland. He graduated from the Manning School, which he represented in TVJ's Schools Challenge Quiz, and from the University of Technology, where he completed a bachelor's degree in law. Toriano then worked for a law firm, while engaging in community activities, and served as the president of the Landilo Citizens Association. He became a politician at the age of 24, during the 2016 general elections, when he ran as an independent candidate for the Westmoreland Central constituency. Toriano also began his campaign to remove the Queen of England as Jamaica's head of state in 2016, and he even wrote an article regarding the issue, in the Jamaica Observer, titled, "The President That Jamaica Needs," which was published on the 11th of June, 2016. Throughout his political career, he has done interviews with Cliff Hughes, Michael Hyper, Empress Golding, and he even appeared on CVM Live's editorial segment with Richard Chen, on March 8, 2018. Chapter 2. Why does he want to be head of state so bad? Toriano entered politics at 24 years old, because he lost faith in the politicians governing the country, and saw no worthy option to vote for during the elections. So, instead of complaining, and leaving the welfare of the nation in the hands of underperforming leaders, he decided to be the change that he wished to see in politics, and therefore, put himself forward to represent the people. This is why, he personally doesn't consider himself to be a politician, but rather a concerned citizen, who saw it fit to challenge the low standard of politics in Jamaica. He believes that Jamaica needs a revolution, which consists of replacing the current collection of politicians, with the brightest, most incorruptible individuals that the country has to offer, and he actively advocates such a revolution, via his accurate yet unconventional political commentary on social media. As a patriotic Jamaican, with a genuine concern for the nation's future, Toriano Beckford aims at embodying and articulating the concerns and desires of the people, so that there exists a documented understanding of the needs of the people, which will allow for more accurate and effective solutions to be achieved, through practical policy making. The sum of his political legacy is not only to identify and administer the needs of the people, but also to empower the people, to be able to take action in removing any leader who failed to perform to a reasonable degree, even if that leader is himself. Jamaica needs a leader who will align the development of the country with his or her own personal interest, as if they are one and the same. And although that is a very selfless and utopian political standard, that is easier said than done, Toriano Beckford believes that he has the potential to achieve that standard to a higher degree than any of the current collection of politicians. And that is why he is determined in his intentions to become head of state. Chapter 3. Isn't he too inexperienced? Toriano Beckford is not like your usual politician, with a wealth of administrative experience. But what he lacks in experience, he makes up for in his ability to formulate innovative ideas and solutions for government policy, which is a product of him living among the people, and being able to relate to their concerns. Additionally, it can be argued that politicians with administrative and political experience tend to eventually join in the corruption, rather than to change the system, because of their time working alongside other corrupt politicians. And so, mainstream political experience is one of the ways in which the cycle of political corruption is transmitted from generation to generation. Therefore, a political outsider is better positioned to bring progressive change to Jamaica than a politician who've spent years in the service of party politics. Thus, people must accept the reality that the change that they are looking for is likely to come from young people who are uncommitted to the corrupt ways of the current system. Toriano Beckford has been in politics for over 5 years, and has managed to amass thousands of supporters throughout Jamaica, and yet, most Jamaicans have never seen him on television, and you should be asking yourself why. This is a man who has ran in 3 elections, has published multiple articles in the newspaper, and is responsible for some of the most progressive policies in Jamaican politics. Yet the media seemingly refused to broadcast anything regarding his candidacy for president. We have seen where the media has given its attention to many trivial issues.
Events the expert acting of a mischievous child. Kalila Enriquez, CBN News.
We've seen where many newly emerging politicians, and even third-party politicians, get invited to panel discussions and talk shows. Yet, a 5-year candidate for head of state is denied a basic interview, even after multiple requests. The media has absolutely no problem broadcasting and popularizing Rohan Chung, so why can't the media broadcast a single story regarding Toriano Beckford's 5-year campaign to become president of Jamaica? There has been multiple attempts over the years to associate Toriano Beckford with one of the two corrupt parties. However, what people fail to ask themselves is, if he is connected to one of the two political parties, wouldn't they allow him access to the media, since it can be presumed that they control over which politicians are allowed to be televised? Toriano Beckford has done 2 televised interviews with each of the 2 TV stations, and none of them has ever been broadcasted. Upon requesting a copy of his interview from CVM TV, he was informed by an employee named Tasha Miller that the interview was destroyed. Upon requesting a copy of his nomination day interview from TVJ, he was informed by an employee named Milton Walker that the interview was not stored. So, why do you think that the media is blacklisting Toriano Beckford and preventing the people from knowing about him? Leave your opinions in the comments section below. Chapter 4. What difference will Toriano Beckford even make? As a political executive, entrusted with the authority to monitor, advise, and penalize the political establishment, the scope of his duty would entail. Number 1. The President will introduce legislation in Parliament to remove custom duties on technology, so that Jamaicans can buy smartphones, laptops, machinery, and even vehicles, and don't have to pay anything at customs to bring it into the country. This will inevitably make Jamaicans richer, and experience a higher standard of living. Number 2. The President will use crowdfunding, corporate sponsorship, and government investment to assist thousands of Jamaicans in starting and operating their own businesses, so that our economy will not remain dominated by foreigners. Number 3. The President will negotiate diplomatic agreements to give Jamaicans visa-free access to the many countries that are currently restricting Jamaicans. This is called the Stronger Passport Policy, and it will give Jamaicans visa-free access to many regions of the world that we currently don't have access to. Number 4. The President will minimize hunger and climate change in Jamaica by planting millions of fruit trees throughout the country, while lobbying the United Nations to recognize the global objective to make food abundant and affordable and available to everyone in need by the year 2040. Number 5. The President will monitor government corruption and ensure the arrest and successful prosecution of corrupt politicians in the government and opposition. Number 6. The President will audit government finance by monitoring all tax dollars collected, while intricately tracking how it is spent. He will then submit annual reports to the public, so that it becomes almost impossible for politicians to steal or mismanage taxpayer money without being exposed. Number 7. The President will enforce a strict retirement age for politicians at 65, and see to it that politicians don't establish political dynasties, and introduce their children and other family members into politics, in order to continue the cycle of corruption. Number 8. The President will prevent persons in government from influencing the police high command, or its leadership. All police commissioners will be elected only by members of the JCF, and therefore, free to investigate and arrest corrupt politicians, whom they owe no loyalty to, for giving them their jobs. Number 9. The President will use the army to dismantle all garrison communities, without the approval of the corrupt politicians, who use politically controlled dons to streamline votes during elections. Additionally, the President will use the army to detain all gang leaders, dons, area leaders, drug kingpins, and any high-level criminal that the current politicians tolerate and work alongside. Number 10. The President will introduce legislation to allow citizens to carry pepper sprays, stun guns, and other instruments of personal protection, so that they have a fighting chance when confronted by criminals. Number 11. The President will structure Jamaica's foreign policy to meet our racial, geopolitical, and economic needs by facilitating the unity, cooperation, and the eventual collective sovereignty of all black nations in the world. Number 12. The President will modernize and industrialize Jamaica by encouraging the development of new industries and increase Jamaica's export market and export potential. This will invariably increase the value of the Jamaican dollar and contain our decades-long fiscal recession. There are many more policies which haven't been outlined for the sake of time, and therefore, viewers are encouraged to visit the campaign page of Toriano Beckford, in order to be adequately informed about the full scope of his platform. These, and many more duties, are the official role of the head of state of Jamaica, and since our independence, we've been delegating that role to an inactive Queen and Governor General. The Governor General is paid millions of our tax dollars a year to perform no practical duties whatsoever. So, instead of retaining a ceremonial figurehead, the people should have no difficulty in giving Toriano Beckford the position, in order to advance the standard of politics in Jamaica. Naturally, politicians won't welcome an authority figure who will expose corruption and enforce the laws on them, and so, steps are taken to have Parliament select the head of state, instead of having the people vote for him or her. If Parliament is allowed to select the head of state, then that person will just be another corrupt politician, whom they trust to not expose their culture of corruption. Therefore, it is the duty of you, the citizen of Jamaica, to condemn this blatant attempt by JLP and PNP politicians, to control and neutralize the regulative position of head of state. Chapter 5. How can Jamaicans be sure that Toriano Beckford will be any different? To be honest, they cannot, because as the saying goes, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, it is unrealistic for any politician to promise the people that they will be different. The terrible track record of corrupt politicians forces Toriano Beckford to deal with the widespread distrust that people have for anyone who is associated with politics. Therefore, Toriano knows that he must prove himself and earn the trust of the people, rather than having it handed to him. And so, he's not asking for your trust, he's only asking for the opportunity to prove himself as possibly the greatest political mind that this country has ever seen. To Toriano Beckford, politics is about professionally administering the affairs of a nation at the highest level achievable. It is not about achieving power, fame, wealth, or a validation of superiority. However, with all honesty, these forces do influence all politicians to some degree. Therefore, it's full time people accept the reality that politicians are just humans, who cannot be trusted with unregulated authority, and need constant oversight from the public, in order to remain honest. This is why the democratic form of governance came into being. Therefore, the people will be granted veto powers over all of the decisions of the president, and will be able to decline any unfavorable decision that Toriano Beckford makes, by way of a referendum. This built-in system of regulation will reinforce the power of the people over the post of president of Jamaica, and will remove any chance of the presidency ever negatively affecting the people. So, with that being said, the people have absolutely nothing to lose by giving Toriano Beckford the chance to serve as their first ever independent head of state. Chapter 6. How do we go about implementing the transition to a republic? In order to achieve this liberating political development, the colonial Westminster Constitution must be amended by a 2/3 majority in Parliament, or by a referendum. This process can be commenced immediately, and can be completed in a relatively short time span, since it consists of completing the struggle of our national heroes, and removing a racist monarch, whose direct ancestors instituted slavery in Jamaica for centuries. The Prime Minister has already made it clear that Jamaica will become a republic, and that he has already started the legislative process to implement the transition. And so, we are arguably already on the path to complete independence, and only need to see to it that the Prime Minister follows through on his promise in due time. It is important to never forget that the most rebellious slaves were kept in Jamaica and Haiti, and that there has always been, and still is, an agenda to keep us under colonial rule. So, we should not naively think that the British monarch is wholeheartedly in support of our desire for full independence. We should not be misled by Barbados getting their independence with the support and backing of the British monarch, because the first president of Barbados is actually their former Governor General, and therefore, a former servant of the Queen of England. Therefore, it is important to note that gaining independence and having a British puppet become our head of state changes nothing. It amounts to the same neo-colonialism, without the Commonwealth status. Therefore, we need to redraft the outdated Westminster Constitution, and draft a presidency whose scope of authority is reflective of our current political needs. Additionally, we need to see to it that the head of state is elected by the people, and not hand-picked by intermediaries of the British royal family. The political experience of having ceremonial figureheads have failed in the Jamaican context, and therefore, we do not need another colonially sympathetic representative. We need a modern president who is loyal to the people of Jamaica and not to a foreign monarch. This innovation to our democratic framework will introduce an impartial and nonpartisan political figure who can regulate government and mitigate political conflicts of interest in good faith. This is a revolutionary development, which requires the full support of the people in order to be actualized. Jamaica has excelled in every aspect except politics, and it's clear that our political system prioritizes foreigners over Jamaicans, and so, restoring our sovereignty will go a far way in decolonizing the mindset of the local politicians, who still relate to the people as colonial subjects. Just think about it. Don't we need an authority figure to monitor the activities of the major political parties, while limiting negative foreign intervention into Jamaica? That is what a head of state should do, and that is why Toriano Beckford is such an essential addition to the Jamaican political hierarchy. So please, get to know Toriano Beckford, and find out about his many plans for the country, on his campaign page, where he has amassed thousands of supporters. Thank you for tuning into our presentation.